I hear people often talk about what we should say. I never hear as much about why so many people don't say it at all. Having a voice can be freeing. It's not just about speaking, it's also about confidence, clarity, and a willingness or even a desire to be heard. And that doesn't just shape the individual, it shapes community. So today we're exploring that connection between voice, confidence, and community. And I have a very special guest, Renee Hawk, my friend, president of Toast of Petaluma, a local club helping people find and use their voice. Now, Renee is also an area director supporting several clubs in the area. She also was a member of a second club that was a corporate club that I don't know too much about, but maybe we'll have time for Renee to talk about that as well. So, Renee, so glad you're here.
Thank you for inviting me.
This is your first time. How does it feel being on the radio?
So far, not as scary as I thought. Thank you for calming me down in advance.
Oh, great. Well, let me ask, how did Toastmasters first come into your life, Renee?
Gosh, when I was in my 20s, somebody came into the store where I was working in retail sales, and she suggested I go to a Toastmasters meeting. I drove by that building and did not see any cars. I was probably driving by on the wrong day and decided not to try again. Then about another 10 years later, somebody else in another state where I was living in Pennsylvania suggested Toastmasters to me. Still, I never went. And then it was at my workplace. There's a whole nother story on that. I'll tell you quickly.
Yes.
At this point in my life, 20 years after I first heard about it, it's in my head, but never went. So my boss gave me an opportunity to speak to her organization within the company. So that was about 150 people, 80 people in the room, video conferenced across the world. I was terrified. I was shaking. The paper was rattling in my hands. My heart was pounding and throbbing. My head, I thought, truly thought, that I was going to self-combust.
Sarah, would you...
So a couple weeks later was my performance review. We're sitting down. She's a senior vice president, and she's talking about how I've been doing a good job. And she's holding her pen and asks me, in what area would you like to improve? And the word Toastmasters spilled out of my mouth, and then I wondered who said that. So she wrote it down. I didn't have to, but that's what led me to look it up and find a club nearby. So that's how I got started in Toast of Petaluma.
I like that you have all that experience and you're giving back to the organization in many ways. But let me ask you out of the blue question.
Okay.
What is, for many people, the favorite part of a Toastmasters meeting?
Probably the one that gets people most involved is what we call table topics. It's impromptu speaking. You get up and somebody tells you to talk about something that you didn't know in advance. You have a few seconds to think about it and then answer.
Then is it timed?
Yes, you have 1 to 2 minutes to develop a mini speech, have an introduction, some supporting information or stories, and then a conclusion. So it's a challenge. It's not quite improv. It's impromptu.
Would you be willing to model that here on the radio show?
It is one of my least favorite parts because it gets me nervous and I feel like my mind blanks. But yes.
How about you asking the question of me?
Oh, yeah.
So the theme for the meeting, voice, confidence, community. Ask me a question, any question that is related even remotely to that topic.
So here's something interesting. You came to Toast of Petaluma and you had some ideas in mind that you wanted to let others know. So how was that experience for you?
I'm 78 years old now. When I was about 60 is when I first started becoming aware of climate change, and I became an activist, and I did a radio show in West Marin, and I helped pass Marin Clean Energy in Marin County, and was knocking on doors, doing protests with
Wow.
signs. I was the Marin County coordinator for MoveOn.org, and so I had a lot of No Kings rallies in my past. I didn't go this time. So what I always had, though, was a passion to want to raise the awareness to other people who didn't seem to be as stressed about where we were headed and what was happening. So my urgency kept going up, but my ability to communicate to people was never there. I tried different things. I tried writing. I did radio show. I did stand-up comedy classes. I tried twice. I failed. I wasn't any good at it.
Good for trying.
And I came to Toastmasters. Part of the reason was I knew that was a place for learning how to be more effective in communicating your message. So I had already gotten over my shyness that often stops people from going, but I was definitely not hitting the mark at whatever audience I was with, getting them to hear what I had to say, because I could mentally see that X of their folded arms, even if they weren't doing it, that body language
Absolutely.
comes through.
Yeah.
Or my wife says, let's not talk about that. She knows what's coming. I've become very radical, and I want to sound an alarm, but people aren't ready for an alarm and not a radical one. So that's my path to Toastmasters. I had started with a couple of clubs, and I quickly realized that was not a forum for giving speeches. It was a forum for practicing speeches, developing better speeches. And that's what I did. Now, what was the next step? Get on the air. And here I am.
You know what I want to say to you is that when you first started delivering speeches at Toast of Petaluma, I was one of those people with the crossed arms. And I looked around and people were sitting back and not wanting to hear you because you were so radical, because you were passionate. But what has happened with the feedback you've gotten, you listen, you pay attention, you incorporate it, and your speeches are still communicating the same thing that you want to communicate, but it's more approachable. It's easier to hear, and for me as an audience member, to digest.
Well, thank you for that. Something we do right when someone's done a prepared speech of 5 to 7 minutes, we take 2 minutes to do what?
To write notes, to make suggestions and write down what we liked that you did and what we suggest you might try.
Those are effective. Sometimes I take them home and read them once and sort them or read them
me too.
again. I'm hearing them. So they're effective. There's another effective step that Toast of Petaluma did that I was not familiar with, and that was, I think it was Saturdays at Pete's.
Oh, yeah.
From
Need to do
10
that
in
again.
the morning to supposed to be till noon. And we sometimes went to 1 or 1:30 because there were members coming there. Senior members were leading it, you and Ray Egan. And I was enthralled with the knowledge that was offered there. So the idea was I could come with a raw idea, and then Ray would say, you can't start like that, or you got to do this, or you got to hit him first. And I was listening. I was taking notes. I was working on my speeches. And then I had the problem of I couldn't memorize. And when I was looking at my paper, it wasn't good. So it was a struggle, but it was a struggle I wanted to have because I could see at the end of that, I would be more effective. And that's what my goal was. Toast of Petaluma, along with 2 other clubs, moved me on my journey. So each club has different times, different culture. And so I'm exposing myself to as much of that as I can. And today I'm hoping to expose it to more of the listening public. Do you think Toastmasters is sometimes misunderstood?
Oh, yeah. I recommend that people visit, and there's no obligation to do anything else but be an audience. I think people are afraid to visit because they're afraid they're going to be forced to speak. But I think when someone visits, if they say, I don't want to say anything today, I just want to observe.
Yeah. First, the meeting is started by the sergeant at arms, set up the place and gets everybody to quiet down. She introduces Renee, our president. And Renee, one of the things you do is introduce the guests. And what do you ask them to say?
It could vary, but I usually ask them what inspired them to come to the meeting. Guests, even though I just said are not required to speak, they usually are willing to say that. And if I have the time before the meeting, I usually prepare the guest that I will ask them a question, and I just want one sentence.
And if I'm the table topics master, I also will go to them and explain, do you know what table topics is? And say, do you mind if I call you? And most of the time, our Toastmasters are asking the guest, would they like to come up? If they say no, no pressure. But many are. And many of them are amazing.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the fact that we're not only speaking to Toastmasters right now on the radio. And so our language is sort of jargon. So we use the word Toastmaster as an individual who is a member of a Toastmasters club. Bernie, you and I are Toastmasters. It could be the person who is the MC at the meeting. That's the Toastmaster of the day. All right, we've got a call.
You're on the air on Cal's Radio. Who's calling, please?
This is Jeff. Hello, Bernie, and hello, Renee.
Hey,
Jeff.
Jeff.
I'm also a member of Toast of Petaluma,
Yay.
Fantastic.
and I just wanted to call in and tell people who are not familiar with Toastmasters that it is the most welcoming organization I've ever belonged to. People really want you to succeed. So it's not a competitive organization. It's really tailored towards helping each individual meet whatever goals they have. I've heard it said that Toastmasters is for three types of people. One, first person is people who are terrified of speaking in public, and they want to overcome that. And the second is for people who are relatively comfortable speaking in public, but they want to get better. And the third type of person is for somebody who is very comfortable speaking in public, and they want to keep in shape.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Jeff. I think of you in the latter category.
Yeah.
You're very accomplished and very confident on stage and always are pertinent to the topic.
It's been a journey. I started with Toastmasters in Marin in 1984.
Oh.
At that time, I had met a woman who became my wife, now my late wife, and I can tell you she was one of the people who was terrified of opening her mouth in public if there were more than three people in the room. She had just returned from England. She was an expat there for a while, and she came back, and she said in England, her American accent, she was very self-conscious. Heads would swivel in the small town she lived in, and she quickly clammed up. So when I met her, most people would have said she was introverted. She just did not like speaking in public. And over the course of less than a year, she became the club president and really loosened up.
Wow. That's quite a journey.
Yeah, it was quite a journey, quite a transformation. So I've seen it with my own eyes. Somebody who was terrified of speaking in public. And in this case, public was 3 or 4 people, to someone who was able to take control of a meeting and to run the club efficiently.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that supportiveness. I feel that too. When we talk about Toast of Petaluma, one of the ways I describe that culture is it's quite liberal. It allows a lot. One time, a woman gave a prepared speech where she didn't talk at all.
Right.
She did it with music, with bells, and asked us to close our eyes. So the openness to be that creative really appealed to me.
Just one other point. You just said something with the word liberal in it, and I want to commend the club and assure people who may be thinking about attending. Our club is a safe space from politics. It's very rare, if ever, that I've heard anything controversial which may turn off one faction or another.
We learn how to be approachable so that if I'm going to present something that's controversial, I have to think about my audience and their perspective. What would they be thinking that they'd argue with me? And I should calmly address.
I'll let you get back to the program, but I appreciate both of you very much, Renee, for appearing on the show and Bernie for hosting it.
Before you go, Jeff, I want to say I appreciate you, and Renee does too, because of how much you care and how supportive you are. When you come to the meeting, you add to that supportive layer that helps people ultimately try something that they're uncomfortable with, gain experience, and then gain confidence. So thank you for helping.
I appreciate that. Perhaps my motto that I try and live by is the change you want to see.
Good.
But my contribution to the club is minimal. Everybody in that club really contributes such a range of positive feedback and support to every member, whether they're a longtime member or a guest, that it's really wonderful to see.
Thank you.
I encourage everyone to mark it on their calendar. You won't find a more welcoming club, in my opinion.
All righty. Later. Bye, Jeff.
Okay. Take care.
Thank you.
I enjoy watching people over time, as Jeff is talking about. We watch them gain some skills.
Absolutely,
And the
right.
feedback, as you said, I've got a lot of, and I appreciate it. Sometimes it's hard to hear, but you take it all and you do what you can. And that has really inspired me in many ways. I wanted to ask you, Renee, do you recall some stories of members who you watched go through a blossoming and then even had a sort of a win outside of Toastmasters, maybe in their career or in their life?
Oh, yes. There's a current member who told us that he's been promoted recently. He's got more responsibility. He's now in a leadership position, and he credits his membership and his involvement and experience with Toast of Petaluma. He said that what he had learned in Toast of Petaluma had played into him getting a promotion.
Fantastic.
And I've got my own.
Yeah, let's hear your story. If you were in corporate land and you had this terrifying upcoming event, how did that all work out?
That's right. That's a good lead in. That same employer and that same boss, a year or two, I actually started a club at that company. It was called Fair Isaac Corporation at the time.
Oh, yeah. They were about credit scores.
That's right. Now they're more commonly known as FICO. I worked in the scoring department, which was 60% of the company's revenue. So it was important. And my boss was the senior vice president of scoring. She told me when she gave me a promotion that my experience in Toastmasters had played into my promotion. I was her executive assistant, which is not somebody you normally think of as a public speaker, but I also had a group of administrative assistants that I supervised. And my boss told me that she could see the improvement in how I supervised my staff based on what I had learned in Toastmasters. So I got that promotion at that company.
Fantastic. I didn't know you had created that Toastmasters group within that company.
Toastmasters in the corporate level is a very inexpensive tool to improve your employees and their ability to communicate effectively.
We've touched on the meeting a little bit, but there are a number of roles that people sign up for the meeting. On the one hand, there are like 6 officers about that have an executive committee, and they make all the important decisions and schedule out special events. They all have roles to play that serve the members. Right. Then at a given meeting, you are encouraged to sign up for a role. Let's talk about some of those roles.
There's the one we call the Toastmaster, and they are the MC. The Toastmaster, the MC, introduces prepared speeches. Delivering a prepared speech is another role in the meeting, and every role is different at every meeting unless you're an officer. You're an officer in our club for a whole year. So then you're a prepared speaker. You deliver your speech at whatever length, following the guidance of the educational program. And then we have table topics after the prepared speeches. As a reminder, are those impromptu speeches where someone is the table topics master. They deliver a prompt to people who are willing to do impromptu speech. And then what really is unique about Toastmasters is that every prepared speech gets immediate feedback. That is delivered by an evaluator, a speech evaluator. And that speech evaluator has a leadership position because they have listened to the prepared speech, made notes, and now they present. And they present a speech evaluation about the speech, not the person. And that evaluation delivers feedback on what the evaluator thought was really effective and what the evaluator thinks might be a good suggestion to improve the speech.
I was afraid of taking that role for the longest time. I didn't want to be on the hook for publicly standing out front and saying what I liked about your speech. I didn't trust myself.
One of the things I like about the way we learn to do a speech evaluation is really effective as management. That is not to say, here's what you did wrong, but to say a suggestion. Here's what you can do to be even more effective.
That approach really does work. I like the way the focus on the evaluation is both in terms of the little love notes that we send in, that we take 2 minutes to write up and put in a basket and the person takes home, and the formal evaluator who stands in front of the room and goes through their analysis of it. And that in itself is a speaking opportunity.
Right.
Because we actually have a little tag to fill out who gave the best evaluation. And then we also have who gave the best table topic. And then we have a thing called a Sparky. What's a Sparky?
Oh, that's a fun thing. One person suggested it to us as the Spark Plug Award, meaning it sparked your interest. It fired something in your mind. And so anyone who has filled a role in that meeting can be eligible for a Sparky Award. But as I said, it was originally called the Spark Plug Award. Then one very endearing long-term member accidentally called it a Sparky, and it stuck. We all liked it. So now it's the Sparky.
I have a couple favored, if I may. I like Table Topics Master. We're coming up with the questions to ask people, given the theme. I like being a Toastmaster, putting out a theme, and looking forward to being an MC, bringing energy at the beginning of the meeting and closing it out with some inspiration, hopefully. And then there's another thing we do, a moment of inspiration or humor. I'm drawn to that. I feel a responsibility to bring energy to the crowd. And these are skills I'm trying to develop. Is there a better way to develop these skills than to exercise them?
Yeah, that's a good role because it's like a mini speech. You don't have as much time, and you get inspired by whatever the theme of the meeting is that the Toastmaster gave. I sometimes need to give a speech and I can't think of the topic. So having the Toastmaster say, this is the theme, kind of tickles my brain and helps me think of something. Yeah.
And it adds to the audience experience. I enjoy Toastmasters as a performance about table topics. Sometimes I'm talking to someone who's still a little nervous about being called. One image I try to keep in mind is I watch this on TV news. Politicians get asked a tough question. What do? They pivot. Right. And we can learn from those pivots. That's okay as long as there's some sort of rational connection. People will enjoy that just fine. Sometimes they say, what do you like about? And I'm thinking, I don't like anything about that. So then I will be on the spot and say something like, let me tell you what I don't like about it. And that feels okay. So you don't have to be narrowly trapped by the question. So watch TV news and see how the pros do it.
Yeah, and it's a good skill to learn. If you're posed with a question and you really don't have an answer, to learn how to pivot and make it still feel like you are addressing the question somehow.
I did ask you earlier about misconceptions about Toastmasters, one that I held for the longest time because I had known about Toastmasters just vaguely as a place you go to practice speaking. And I always envisioned like what we do at a family gathering, like Thanksgiving or a big dinner or a birthday, where I will stand up and I will toast the birthday person. I always felt that's what a Toastmaster was, giving a toast. But that is one version of it. If you can have what you learn at a Toastmaster session help you in business, help you in relationships, help you in family gatherings. Those are all positive steps.
I said we would probably talk about the educational program. So you just reminded me, you thought of Toastmasters as a place where you learn to give a toast. In the educational program, which is called Pathways, there is a project to deliver a toast. And so when my sister got married and I had a role in her wedding, oh my gosh, now I need to do a toast. So I was able to read the information about what a toast should include or should not include. And with the Pathways program, I was able to watch an example. I also, other things happen in our lives. I was in a position to need to do a eulogy. There's a project in Toastmasters that teaches you about doing a eulogy.
Oh, very nice. I didn't know that. That's excellent. There's different tracks you can sign up for, and then there's 5 levels at each track. I'm overwhelmed by it, but I went along a couple of those tracks, but mostly I've been winging it since then. But I feel like I'm on my own track, which is not unusual for me.
We have someone who joined because his brother was getting married and he knew he was going to have to give a speech. So he joined for that purpose, to learn how to give a speech at his brother's wedding. Then his brother got married. He stopped coming to Toastmasters. And without the 2 brothers speaking to each other, the brother who had just gotten married joined the club after his brother had left the club. And then we've had a picture of the whole group. And ironically, the 2 brothers stood in the same place that the other brother did. So we've got a real life story where someone joined because he knew that he was going to have to give a best man speech.
Have you personally ever had a time where before Toastmasters and before the experience, you felt like later, oh, I should have said so? I used to have the notion of, I wish I had said that at the moment, because there's a moment where something is ripe for saying. And then if you think about it later, bringing it up again, that doesn't really work. So the preparation, like with table topics, it's like improv. It's letting down your guard. And one of the expressions I like, it's the one area where you talk before you think. It's not only acceptable, it's encouraged, because if you think too much, you tend to censor yourself. You tend to limit yourself. So we will take a moment often to think and contemplate. I know that I have to latch onto a story pretty quickly. I never thought of myself as a storyteller. I'm a science guy. I like talking about facts. I was political. What is it that you're thinking that you would like to share with other people? And then start speaking up. Find your voice, find your confidence. And if you need help in that process, I can't think of a better organization than Toastmasters. So why do you keep coming back? What's in it for you now?
Oh, I feel like it's the community. I remember hearing that people live longer who are affiliated with a church. And that's an interesting idea to me. And when I think about it some more, I think it's maybe they're living longer because they have a spiritual belief and they feel connected to the people in the church. I think a big part of it is that it's a community. So Toastmasters and my club is a community for me. And the thing about that community that I love is I meet people I would not otherwise meet. That's healthy for me. I get that variety. The people who are in the club who have joined want to learn something. But it's people that not only want to learn, they also join in the experience of helping others learn. So I like that it's both people who are interested in improving themselves and people who are interested in helping others improve themselves.
And it's focused on a very essential part of our being. We are herd animals. We're community by nature, and we communicate through words. We can keep it to texts on our phones, but I prefer that we actually talk to each other. I think a sad moment is when you see four people around a table and they're all on their phones.
Right. What I learned during the pandemic and during our time while there was a hybrid meeting and a Zoom meeting was how to communicate online, and learning one really effective thing that is not intuitive, and that is, if I want my audience to feel like I'm connecting with them on Zoom, I need to look at the camera and not follow my instinct of looking at the people on my screen. And there's a lot of other skills I learned by having the meetings online.
There's actually clubs that are only online. Right. They sometimes have a special focus. So there's a whole variety of clubs available. If you Google Toastmasters, you can see what clubs are around. Your circumstances might be such that there are closer clubs or there's more focused clubs. And I like that. I like that they have grown different solutions for different situations.
Toastmasters.org is where you go to find a club. And then for the club that you and I, Bernie, are in, it's all one word, Toast of Petaluma.org.
There is the public-facing site, and it's also the intra-organization. Once you become a member, you're on the inside to see the agendas. It has this nice feature where the roles of each agenda are there, and if they're available, you're encouraged to click on it and say, I'll fill that role for that meeting. And if you don't fill one, our vice president will assign one to you, and you can always decline. But the opportunities for learning leadership skills are another level above learning how to have a voice and feeling confident to step in and speak it. And having the community feel safe is great. If you want to get a promotion, why not accept that role at Toastmasters? I want to thank you, Renee, so much for coming on with us and being so helpful in explaining what this is all about.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Great. And I want to thank the listeners and our designated caller. Jeff has been very reliable, and I appreciate that not too many people are ready to put their voice on the air, but maybe in time. So I do want to just say voice does shape confidence, and confidence does lead to action, and action shapes community. The community that Renee was talking about, that we are the Toastmasters community who support each other and look forward to a meeting and go to Applebee's afterwards and we have special events. There's also the community that you go out with skill to your work, to your social groups. Incredible benefits wrapped up in leadership. So you get to practice as much leadership as you want.